Okay. Yeah, thank you everyone for joining us today for a panel that I didn't write the description, but I think is billed as the making of Still Wakes the Deep, a very British horror story. Does that sound right? Yeah, cool. So hi, I'm Alex Spencer. I'm deputy editor of Edge magazine, and I'll allow the talent on stage to introduce themselves.
Yeah, I'm John McCormack. I'm the studio art director and the project creative director of Still Wakes the Deep.
I'm Laura Dodds, and I was associate art director on Still Wakes the Deep.
Hi, I'm Daan. I work as the audio director at the TCR.
I'm Louis Larsson-De Wet, and I'm the project technical director.
Great, and I think, as I say, it's billed as a very British horror story, so I think that a good way of approaching it is probably to split those two things. I know that sort of certainly, what caught our eye. Still Wakes the Deep was an Edge cover game last year, and a big part of that was that initial pitch of, it's just another one of your 1970s oil rig set, horror games. But let's start with the sort of kitchen sink part of that. The oil rig setting. That was there right from the sort of beginning of the conception of the project, right?
Yeah, when it started, maybe 4 years ago, Dan Pinchbeck, the creative director, he wrote the story of this Scottish oil rig disaster in 1975, and when he talked to us about it, when I came on as art director at the start, I was looking at it just going, right, so hold on. 70s, Scottish. Yeah, that's me. I'm for the 70s. This is like, I have to do this. So I kind of, when we talked about it right away, I was going, we kind of shared sensibilities in terms of Ken Loach films, and we cited things like Kes and Kathy Come Home, and they kind of make these Ken Loach world of cinema that had a distinctly kind of British feel, like gritty realism and people talking the way they actually talk and no any kind of put on way for television. And they were known for using non-actors as well. They'd have a few professionals, but generally the rest of the cast were made up as non-actors, so everything felt naturalistic and grounded. So for us, that was the connection point where I was going, could we tell a horror story in a period setting and make it feel real? Like, make it feel like it's actually happened. And the tagline we had for it is, the internal tagline was, what if Ken Loach was hired by the BBC to film a documentary on a Scottish oil rig? Then he went mad, had to be taken off it, and he was replaced by Dario Argento to finish the film. So we were kind of like, Stanley Kubrick was the second one. So it was one of the ones where we had an idea of grounding the game in reality at the start in order to project, how crazy it would go at the end.
And I had a complete opposite reaction to John, because John's like, oh yeah, oil rig, 1970s, I get it. And I thought, oh my God, I have no idea what an oil rig is like. Sorry, I don't remember the 70s. But really, really luckily, there was tons of archive footage. And me and quite a lot of the rest of the team weren't particularly familiar with this premise. We just did so much research. It was just a huge amount to kind of like clue into the project. So really, and also John, there was sorry, I'm making fun of people, but like this classic thing of someone like bringing up pictures of like an old heater and saying, is this what it used to be like? And you'd say, oh yeah, I used to have one of those in my like grandma's house. Yeah,
no, I would be sitting in the corner of the studio where it felt like I had a wee tartan blanket. You were going, Granddad, is this what it looked like? And I'm like, yes, it is, son, that's good. And then, it's just the way it was. But
by the end, actually, the whole team were kind of like very versed in also the British versus like American oil rigs or like Scandinavian oil rigs, and we're all oil rig nerds. We talk about the oil rig fantasy.
The amount of research was crazy in the sense that I do feel, I mentioned this the other day, but I feel that we could take any member of the team, drop them on an oil rig, and they'll be able to tell you where the toilets are. They've got a very deep knowledge.
And from an audio perspective, how did that kind of play in? What apart from 70s Scottish Grandad, what were you using as sources? And
well, we also, of course, dived into research, and we were looking for references that we could find. There wasn't a lot. There were some old documentaries where, well, mostly it would either have music or just people talking over it, and every now and then there was like a little snippet where we could hear something of the actual sounds on the oil rig. So there were, in particular, one thing that really stood out. It was like a very distinct kind of squeak that would play as the drill was operating, and that's something that we essentially modeled and implemented in the early stages of the game when the oil rig is still functioning. That is as far as we could go in terms of an attempt at recreating what it really would have sounded like, and the rest was more based on our own sort of interpretation. Yeah.
And with the interview as well with I always forget the connection exactly, but someone who worked in an oil rig, and we were asking them all sorts of questions about like what it felt like to live there, and getting clued into, I guess the other side was making this a very personal space, finding out what the cabins were like, what like signage was around, what it sounded like, what it felt like, because you don't quite get that personal feeling from the documentaries. And the story is so personal with Kaz and the crew members, and making the oil rig like a lived-in space. So that was really important.
And that commitment to authenticity that we're talking about, like, was that ever like a headache in development? Like, how do you balance like, well, we need it to do this for the game versus like it has to be, like it really was?
Yeah, I think there's a few headaches that came along the way with that, because we one of the pillars of the game is authenticity, and all the deep research went into that, and we knew the dimensions of a cabin, the dimensions of a corridor. We knew how close railings had to be. We knew from rig architecture how it had to work. But when you put gameplay into that, you've kind of got to stretch your truth a wee bit in terms of level design and just the I guess the ergonomics of the flow of a place, like, because these environments are incredibly boxy and small, and they don't tend to have long corridors. But if you want a chase sequence, you can't just have a spiral staircase. It'll drive you mad. So we had to stretch the truth, and Louis would, he was it you coined the term TARDISing?
TARDISing, yes. So we basically have a room on the outside, it looks a certain size, but then when you go in, it's actually massive, and then we can accommodate the gameplay in there as well.
And hopefully the player didn't notice. And you never heard this. But I think the other part with authenticity gave you in particular a problem was I think Laura.
Talk about the containers.
No, I'm talking about legal.
Oh.
Right. So when you're recreating an authentic space, you're doing it from, as I say, research, pictorial research, documentaries, or these kind of things. Books at the time. So you're going, like wallpaper patterns and ashtrays, and you're picking out all the details that tell the story and make the player feel grounded. But we got all the way through 3.5 years development at that point, and the legal department went, who made that chair?
Oh, yeah.
Who made that table? What is that picture frame? Did you get the rights for that? What about that light fix? And and we were like, fuck!
Yeah, it's like the entire game is referenced.
The entire game is referenced. So it was like, oh, we're in a legal nightmare here. It's one of the things that, we never... The only things we specifically named was the food and the...
we started using our team members' surnames. I think there's like Dodds Carnation Milk somewhere in the game.
Because we had spam and all that. We had the things that made you feel like you were there. And when it came to actually the rights, they were just like, you have to pay a fortune just to use a tin of spam, and we were like, well.
We did manage to get a few though.
We got
there
few.
Was Partick Thistle Football Club.
Yeah.
And my stepdads are fans. We managed to get the football scarf, but it's like the amount of things we got were so tiny, and each one was like several emails from me just going, hey, you might not know about us. We're video game company, and we're making this game set in the 70s, an oil rig. Can we have your like football strip in our game? And some people were just really generous and very happy to be included. And some obviously just never got back to me. But
£1 million. It was just like, whoa.
yeah,
That is very expensive for a tip ban.
but one thing was really nice was that I'd been trying to find like pictures and things to put in people's cabins from like photo libraries and things like that, and it was going to cost loads of money. And I don't know why we hadn't thought of it earlier, but like getting in touch with everyone's families. And so towards the end of the game, I just called out to everyone in the team, like, please give me photos. Was your dad a boxer? Or like was your granddad on a football team? Like, please send me your family photos. And I just had like a lovely week of like inserting the whole team's like very treasured family photos all through the cabins. No one wanted to be in Adair's cabin because he's like a right-wing kind of National Front kind of guy. I didn't say I had to use like my uncle because no one else wanted to be in it. I don't think he still doesn't know that he's in there. But
Is Laura's uncle in the room today?
yeah.
Okay.
I don't think he's going to play the game, so it'll be okay. But that actually turned into a really nice opportunity because it felt very personal. The whole thing's very personal to the team as well as like personal to the fictional crew members. You know, it just like gave that authenticity.
Yeah, I think with the children's drawings on the walls as well. I got my son, who was 7 at the time.
Yeah, again, don't tell legal that we've got like child
and it was
labor.
and he got all his mates at school to draw like "Come home, Daddy, soon," you know, oil rig pictures and all that. And I was brilliant, got them all, put them in the game kind of thing. So it was
Homemade Christmas.
Homemade Christmas. It was all that kind of stuff. That detail, and it was, I mean, I guess it's part of the authenticity when you're talking about roughnecks at sea, but there's a heart to it where they're missing home and it's all about family. So that's what the cabins are about, and getting that kind of 3-dimensional character thing for everybody would make losing them later spoiler.
Oh yeah, sorry.
painful.
Yeah, you should mention this is going to get into quite spoilery territory. I hope that's okay. I meant to say up front. Sorry.
And also how the characters looked, like using kind of like regular looking people. Like I always try to say regular looking people. Like my stepdad is like one of the models for them, and it was just really fun trying to move away from like very typical strong-jawed action hero type figures as well.
Yeah, because people, you know, as part of research, that was, you know, 70s.
Bad teeth.
From my memory was not healthy lifestyles. You know, like the people they didn't groom themselves as they do now. You know, there was that kind of thing where you just go, no, this is a particular look of person that you get, and that took a while to get in.
And that authenticity also, in terms of the crew, comes through in the script, right? Like, well, I mean, for one thing, there are an awful lot of C-bombs.
Yes.
Some would say not enough.
By some, do you mean you? Was that ever I mean, we'll get into the actual sort of artistic side of it, but was there ever any concern about, like, I mean, it sounds silly, right, in a game where you've got all these things happening to human bodies, but like, is there any concern about like, how are the C-bombs going to be received?
It has to come. I mean, you know, Dan had wrote the script, and it was. I would think it was heavier, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was right from the beginning. It was.
And we had to dial it back because it sounded like a prison ship. You know, it was just C-bombs everywhere. But I think it was that kind of authenticity of language that, you know, was important. And Dan did an amazing job of getting the characters. And, you know, that's the way people talk where I'm from anyway in Glasgow. So it felt authentic to me. And there was a few things that on release that you're going, you know, there was the things with the subtitles, like I guess we have to go with subtitles, leave them on by default, have like a Queen's English version, you know, for people that want that. I don't know why they would. I thought you want the authentic one. I think there's loads of, we put a lot of work into the subtitles and translations and the Gaelic translation as well, so that people could feel at ease and with that language. plus the performances. We're hoping even if you didn't have the subtitles and didn't know what they were saying exactly, the performances were so convincing that you'd get the gist of the emotion that was happening at the time. So there was a lot of that went in.
For the translations, we also translated everything from the Scottish dialect into the Queen's English as such, and then we gave all of the translators that version to then get the Japanese and the Korean and everything.
Right.
Because giving them the Scottish just wouldn't have made sense.
And the performances you mentioned, like how much did they shape the language, the characters? I mean, even like, obviously like mainly the characters are Scottish, but not everyone. Like was that kind of a case of, we're looking for someone who can play a Barnsley fan, or did that happen because of the actor? And do you know?
I think it's the research.
Yeah, I mean,
it's very crude.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we should first of all say that when it came to the casting and so on of the game, that was really Dan Pinchbeck with our voice directors, Kate and Damien, and so that was really more their domain. But I do know, for instance, the example you just gave of Barnsley, the voice actor who played Roy was I think it's even from Barnsley. So
right,
yeah,
so it's, and yeah, exactly. So there, yeah, it was. I think it sort of partially written in, and then also partially just whatever the actors brought to the table in that sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So
No, I was just going to say that the rig itself, it is, you'll get people from all the British Isles, and you'll get people from Norway, and the specialists that come in, and well, it's predominantly Scottish because it's up in Aberdeen. You would have the other people in there, and that's what's great, I think, in terms of the game's authenticity of language, is that we've got people in the game from Barnsley and Liverpool and Belfast and the Isle of Skye and Glasgow and Aberdeen, and they're from everywhere. Because I'm so used to playing games where if there's a Scottish person in it, they're a dwarf usually, and they've got one Scottish accent done by an American voice actor. It's genuinely offensive stuff when I hear it, but that's generally what you see in games, and to have not only authentic Scottish accents, authentic regional accents for Britain, but varied as well. That was important.
And can you talk a bit about like how the actual, like when did the performances come in during the making of the game? Was that later on or?
Very very early actually.
Kind of like two phases really.
Yeah, I mean it was. We wanted to sort of record the script as it stood at the time, so that we could also unblock the animation department to get the cutscenes done, and to get a real feel for the what the game was gonna feel like, and the pacing and so on. So it was the entire script was recorded really early, and then we did. There was some like numerous rewrites and so on. So kind of late towards the end of the project, we did another recording.
Yeah, there was quite a large pickup session.
It was sort of a blessing and a curse
at
the same time. Like it was amazing to have this like vision from Dan, and I could really hear and picture what the game was like, who these people are. Narrative is so important for us to like be shaped when there's so many other things which were in flux, to have something to like ground us. But then when the other things had started to fall into place, like the level design meant we didn't actually want to go back to that location. We didn't want to go back to the canteen. We want to now go to a different location that we've built, and then having to shift the story around a new flow basically in terms of game design. So it meant like, reworking things, but I think it was really great having that like narrative grounding at the beginning as well.
Absolutely, and I think it has to be worth mentioning that the performances in the game were unbelievable. Being in the room, watching these voice actors like Alec Newman in particular that played Kaz was a real honor. Like I was getting emotional, like proper, like there's some death scenes in the game and some horrible stuff happens in the game, and you'd see the actors would come in and act it together, and the physical, we'd put the mics down and they'd be holding each other and acting it out and crying and like, so I'm sitting at the booth window And like, I'm all snot bubbles and tears and puffy eyes. I'm just sitting there going, oh my God, it's like it's happening. And I was blown away by that. And then, because, you know, like Alec Newman would stand up and go, how was that, John? And I'm like, that was really good, Alex. And this is when I know that I'm not a professional voice director, like, because I was only there as a kind of backup guy. But the voice director went, let's go again. And I was like, really? They were like, right, refresh, go. And they did it again. And then they did it again. And then the director turned around to me and went, 3, it's 3. And I was like, he's right. The third one was the best. I would have stopped at 1. Like, but, you know, like, but it was amazing to see, like, even the physicality of, like, you know, I mean, Dan knows all, but you know, we went through thousands of breathing loops in different circumstances. Right, breathe, you know, these different paces. Now you've just come out of water. Breathe. Like, now you're running. You know, now you're being chased. You know, now you're freezing. Like, you know, all these kind of. And it was like 2 days of just Kaz, like Alec Newman, breathing. He's running up and down the spot, sweating. He's getting, because he's breathing so much, he's getting dizzy and he's leaning against the wall. I was like, what a job.
Yeah, I think there were sort of several stages throughout the recording process with the voice actors that I was worried that we were sort of pushing them too hard, especially for the creature, you know, material that we needed also from them. So it was always very, very, you know, important that we would book them kind of, you know, towards the end of the week so that they would have like a weekend, you know, to recover their voices and be ready for their next job, as it were. Yeah,
I guess having invoked the creatures, that's probably a good time to start turning to the second half, the horror story part of things. But before we do, just like, you know, that Ken Loach bit of the game, as you say, there's that sort of opening where it is all very normal, and like, how do you decide how long to stay in that moment before things start going weird? And
we actually, the initial script got you to Rennick's office, like they got you to the event that kicks off the horror stuff very quickly in the first iteration. You just come out your cabin, cross a bridge, and go across.
I was going to say, actually, the first iteration, we had like a lot of level design of like a kind of finding your way, but it didn't have the aspect of meeting people. So we were like, this is too long for players to be just wandering around and like kind of doing pathfinding stuff. And then we were like, okay, no, let's do a much faster route. And then, sorry, it's like 4 years of development. So it's like trying to take back. But then we were like,
it was the response to play testing.
Yeah.
Where we were doing loads of kind of play tests, and the overwhelming feedback was, you know, if these people are going to be in danger, I feel like I should know them more. Yeah. And I was, of course, like, you know, we've got a canteen, we've got bunks, we've got all the, you know, the derrick. You're going to be, let's open it up, and because of that, you know, obviously that stuff costs money. So you know, but when you have, that's the benefit of getting play testing and, you know, some professional kind of mock reviews that we got done, where if you can go to a publisher with overwhelming evidence that this is going to make your game better, and just go, can I have 70 more man-mans to you know, to get these things that people are clearly saying the game needs, and it, you know, listening to the players, listening to the game itself, and responding to it.
Like Alien.
Yeah, Alien was
a big one. Like, you can just see that it works in cinema, and that's what we needed to do.
Sorry. No, I was just going to say, I think it's also fair to point out that we would have wanted even more of that, even more time with the characters before things really kicked off. But that's sometimes just part of, you know, budget and scheduling. Yeah.
Well, we added the cabins as well, so you can go and have a look, and some of the personalities in there and the things they like.
Yeah, there's a lot of optional kind of stuff in there, but again, you know, it was a lot of the aspects of the game were quite risky in terms of, you know, how much do you put in before you start the scares? Mm-hmm. You know, like half an hour.
How compelling it's going to be.
You just don't know. People are going to be wandering about going, all right, this is a Ken Loach film. Like, I'm just talking to people, and they're really annoyed about stuff. So, the balance in the end, I think we kind of found it, you know.
And when those scares do start, is creatures the right way of referring to? Like, do you have a way of?
I usually say transformed.
Those puppets.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
The
what
We
call
kind
it.
of keep that like
Something
a
like
secret.
that.
I've tried to like transformed crew. but-
Yeah.
Well, we called them a lot of things, but I think we did start with puppets.
Yeah.
Because of the nature of what was happening. You know, if something's come on board, it's written the crew apart and almost like trying to put them back together, like animate them. Like that was the original kind of idea. So they were originally called puppets, but it was really the transformed crew. But you know,
Later
I think
we had the visuals of the tendrils. That was
Aye.
afterwards, but then that kind of also makes sense of like puppets with like string and like
Aye,
the way they
because
move
strings.
and yeah.
But I think
One of our sort of tech demos when we're trying to make these creatures sort of how do you actually make a blob of flesh move and make it look realistic and also recognize somebody in there. And we were sitting reviewing it, and there was this technical glitch where the physics just freaked out and it's made this really blob thing. And we all gone, that's it, that's what we're going to make. That's exactly it. And so
was
some people were mistaken.
unpredictable in the way that it moved.
it genuinely unnerved everybody. This bug had stretched out every part of it, and it was like doing this and crawling along all the surfaces, and we were just like, ah! Like, shit, that's it. There, right, do that. Like coders, do that. Animators, do, you know, like copy that happy accident.
Really-
But that's how sometimes it works.
Yeah, and it really helped us with this thing when we were looking at so many horror films and how they kind of lose their power a little bit once the creature is fully revealed, and like it's so much more frightening, like what exists in the player's imagination. And so, yeah, this visual bug, which led on to lots of other like design decisions about you catch a glimpse, like is that a fragment of? We started to like make the textures much more fragmented. Like, is that a little bit of cloth? Did I see a bit of hand? Is that some flesh? Is it blood? And like, yeah, unpredictable movement, keeping them in the dark or in the fog, and or keeping them really tall so you can kind of just see like tendrils coming down. Seeing,
the silhouettes is really
silhouettes.
important to frame them correctly. So when you first see it, then you have this framing to sort of give you that sort of fear.
Yeah. So we spent a lot of money on them and a lot of time trying to make them not visible.
And I was driving McKelly, the concept artist that was on the project. I was driving him mental because we kept asking him to draw monsters, you know, like what could happen. But every time he drew something, it was then entirely seeable, and then it wasn't looking scary. So it was almost like we were asking him to draw something, but not show us it in a weird way. We were kind of, what does it look like through a door? Like if I'd just seen a bit of it, like.
He started doing like little like black and white thumbnails of just like backlit corridor and just like those silhouettes and things, and that's when it started.
That's when it was working.
And then our character artists would be like, what are we actually making here? Because I can't, just use your imagination,
Just make this one.
Yeah, exactly.
But think about it, if you're running away from it, you're not looking at it.
Well, that's how
we did add a feature
that was
to
the
look
idea.
back. But
Yeah, I was going to ask, is that why there's the sort of review mirror? Was it like, please look at our hard work?
particularly in sort of confined spaces, you can then look back and then see the things really close and then get it right.
That came in as a late thing, which I thought was really good. I think was it Rob's idea where he went, we should put in a tutorial that says, look behind you. And when I've watched people play it on Twitch and like the kind of streamer stuff, as soon as that instruction comes up, they go, "Oh no! Oh, I don't like this."
Yeah, it's like a dare, isn't it? It's like in a film where it's like, "Don't go downstairs." It's like, "Don't look behind you."
And how that kind of authenticity that we talked about with the crew and with the rig, like how, like when you were making something fantastical, like how does that play in, or is that kind of not a concern when you're designing the creatures? Like, are you trying to be authentic to any kind of particular thing with their design, like audio or visual?
I think there was a lot. It's the like I remember when the lines, the voice acting started coming in for after they'd been transformed, and I remember hearing Adair, who was like quite this aggressive character in real life, and he says something like, "Only 2 weeks until I can go home," and just like this idea of like home, he's transformed it based to like part of his mind is just like homesick, and just brought so much empathy and humanity to these creatures, and it made that, well, even calling them creatures, they're still human. Like, although again, that's something that kind of changed over development, but like even earlier on, we spent so much time thinking about who these people were and like what that would mean when they were transformed, like how their behavior would change as a kind of enemy AI, and you know, the voice acting and
the idea of empathy, that you were supposed to be, of course, scared was always obvious as a horror game. You know, you're supposed to get scared, but one of the core ideas, and that came from Daan Pinchbeck, was that you should also be able to feel empathy for these creatures who are also your former friends in some cases, because you have kind of like a shared enemy, which is, you know, the North Sea that is increasingly getting closer, and is just deadly for all of you. And this idea of how to establish empathy through the creatures, at least from an audio point of view, we didn't land immediately on what we landed at in the end, which was that they would actually speak still kind of human-like. We went through a lot of iteration where we were trying to find almost like they would have their own sort of language, which was still partially human or English and completely transformed. We were trying to be very, very clever, and it just didn't really work. What really worked was when they spoke clearly, when they actually said things with these sort of odd kind of animalistic sounds thrown in.
Both of them calling each other along the rig as well and communicate in some way. That's quite scary too.
Yeah, and that was in terms of authenticity. If you use that as a topic, that was very much based on how just things in nature work. How pack animals in particular, you know, communicate over a distance. So this idea of choruses, that's what we felt like would be a nice sort of touch to give this sort of transformed crew. So that they're really on that edge between something inhuman or animalistic, and still also some part of their humanity is still in there.
And I think another big part of like authenticity with the creatures or the transformed crew is that it's not all just happening to the player, and not all just happening to Kaz. It's like the interpersonal relationships that are happening. You know, so for example, Gibbo, one of the first encounters, he's kind of howling, and you don't really know why. He's getting very worked up about you going into this particular space, and when you get there, you discover like Gibbo, in like some sort of rage, has killed another crew member, Douglas, and he's like sort of hidden. None of this is necessarily explicit to player, but this is sort of story like has hidden the body in shame. He's like he's ashamed, and as soon as you find it, he kind of backs off, and he's sort of like remorseful and crying.
So you can hear like the monster's voice going, I didn't mean it, you know, so that there's this. Meanwhile, you know, you're going, all right, mate, cheers, like trying to get the hell out of there. But you're meant to, you know, hopefully for the player it is like, it leaves doubt about the situation, you know, where maybe there's something left. I think Kaz says that, maybe there's something left in them in there, like, you know, and we kind of reinforce that through it. You know,
we had Muir and Innes as well. At one point, we'd like thought about them being like a fused puppet. These two characters who work together are like very close and have this like very kind of jocular relationship. And we thought about like fusing them as two puppets, but in the end, like Muir is like looking for Innes. He doesn't want to be left alone. Yeah. He's like almost hunting for him, and in this really kind of messed up way, he wants to be with him. Anyway, and like just seeing those relationships, and I think that's what really helped bring like personality and authenticity to the design of them.
And outside of the crew themselves, obviously there are other sort of incursions of supernatural stuff. There's the kind of well, again, I don't know how to refer to them. There's the sort of growths. Would that be a fair way of describing it?
Substance or the
I mean, we called it goop.
Oh no! I was going to say, don't say goop.
So what kind of what stuff were you drawing on for the goop?
Oh no!
I think I did one of the pillars. For he's going to be raging over that.
I didn't know.
I think one of the pillars of the game, the visual style, which Laurel talked about, at the start we had established as a terrible beauty. It was one of the highlighting pillars, and it was meant to be something, you know, that you get with cosmic horror. But we wanted something in the game that was where you're wanting to look away from it because it's disgusting, but at the same time it's kind of beautiful and fascinating, and it feels alive and intelligent and otherworldly. And that was hard work, like in terms of fusing body horror. It looked terrible for ages. It was so hard, but and it was like it's one of the ones where it's trial and error. Whenever you try something new, you're trying to, you fail loads along the way, and you just go, it's not working. And with the terrible beauty thing, they're anachronistic, so it's really difficult to make a thing that makes you go, ugh, but want to touch it. Like, and
I think we sort of like started circling in on this like theme of transformation, and there's lots of other examples in film of like beauty and horror and transformation. So there's things like Midsummer with like the florals and like the change of the bodies, or Hannibal with the kind of like dioramas of bodies, which are very kind of theatrical, and there being like a beautiful shape, beautiful shape language of them. So,
by the way, our Google and YouTube algorithms are
it's disgusting.
Disgusting. The stuff that we've looked at.
Yeah. But like we started to look at like shape language of like a flow and a kind of like movement through the spaces, and that brought a kind of beauty to it. And also things like stained glass and oil and iridescence and all the colors that you find inside bodies. Like I remember, John, you're like, look at like real life dissected bodies, and you see like organs are like yellow and purple and red, and imagine if that's like splayed out. That is like the colors you'd find in like blown glass. And
because it's only red because of the blood. When you take all that away, it's just color. It's like a rainbow. It's like rainbow in there.
Yeah.
And you just got to kind of go to, and that's what was getting spread around, and stained glass type color.
We just got the 1 minute warning, so yeah, I know, right? I know.
Just getting started.
But one other thing I was going to say, bubbling and things, but,
does that mean I'm not allowed to ask anything more? Well, I
just keep going.
Yeah. They can force us off. Sorry, I didn't wear a watch. Well, just one sort of final thing, which I guess would like, now that the game's out there in the world, like for each of you, is there a sort of particular, however tiny thing that you're really sort of particularly proud of, or that you're, glad people have noticed, or maybe they haven't yet, that you'd kind of pick out from, the wider goop?
I think that there's two things for me. One was both are unexpected. One is that I feel like it's a personal thing, getting Scottish accents out there, getting regional accents, getting voices that you don't hear much. Working class voices. For different areas of Britain, aren't they really the heroes of games much? And at least known in an authentic way. And I think I'm really proud that that's out there. And for what I've seen, it was a big risk, but people have really liked that. Like it's been embraced by gamers, and I'm really proud of that. And the other thing I guess is that when we were really strict with the pillars of the game, in the sense that there was things that we could have put in the game in terms of features that we were like, that would have ticked a lot of boxes in reviews, like loads of kind of things, but we were really strict in saying, would Kaz do that? Like you could think any kind of features like collectibles or anything. Kaz would not be running around the rig looking for collecting Auto Trader magazines in the middle of this thing he's in, because it's happening to him, and if it doesn't line up with character and story, you cut it. So I was proud of how we dealt with that, and also the fact that we kept the story as short as it should have been, and no longer, which is risky,
and not something we've achieved today.
Okay,
I'll do one quick.
Yeah, go.
A massive spoiler, so I'm going to say about the ending because that's the thing I'm really proud of. I'm sorry, but watching people cry on YouTube basically. And I remember our brief for it was like like 2000, like transcendental, like we had like the bar was up here for like some of the references, and just delivering the kind of emotional gut punch basically was very satisfying to see people reacting to that.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we will leave it on tears. Thank you much, everyone. Cheers.